if you're going to change an area, you do three things. Number one, you focus on it and you get clear and compelling vision for what you want. If your body's not where you want it to be, I tell you there's one simple reason. It's not your focus. No, I focus on it. I focus all the time on how fat I am. No. You see, if you focus on crashing into the pole, trying not to, the more you try not to, what you focus on, that's where the energy goes, that's where you go, right? We all know that. But what people tend to do is, I'm saying focusing on what you want, not what you don't want. And not only just focusing on what you want, where you focus and say, well, I'd like to be strong, I'd like to be energetic, I'd like to be fit. It's focusing and making it compelling. If your only reason you're focusing on it is like, well, I need to lose some weight because I feel fat, versus I want the energy to burn because with that I'll have more passion, more aliveness, I'll be able to impact my children. I'll be able to, I'll be able to take the business to another level. I'll be able to have fun when I'm stressed out and tired. I'll have creativity flowing through me. You can't just focus on it. You got to create a clear and compelling future in that area that will pull you towards it so you're not trying to push yourself. If there's an area you're not improving in, think of three pillars if you would. Pillar one is get focused and clear. What's compelling? Where are you? Really? And don't lie. Where do you want to be? And make it so compelling you can't help it. When you wake up in the morning, you want to transform this area of your life. So the quality of your life already is better just because you are so excited about what you're after. When you do that with your body or your emotions or your finances or time or any other area and you start focusing and you're clear, you're going to have energy. You're going to have drive. You're going to start to do something. How do you make sure what you do really works? You need the second pillar. And think of this as three pillars. Because, two-legged stool is going to fall over. One leg, you can't sustain. Second pillar, you got to get the best. When I say get the best tools. Get the best map. Get the best mentor. What I'm looking for is, it's wonderful that you're focused and clear and excited, but if you're running east looking for a sunset, you got a problem. I don't care how much you believe, I don't care how much enthusiasm you have, you got the wrong tools. You got the wrong strategy. You got the wrong map. And so it's really critical in life, I believe, to get a map and get a mentor. Because the map very often changes. And the best mentor, somebody who's the best at what they do, they know the shortcuts, don't they? Or they know when the roads change. You don't get stuck hanging out, in the desert when you're trying to get to the ocean, metaphorically. So I've always focused on not just finding somebody good, but who's the best at it, who's got the best tools. Think of that first pillar as a target. You're crystal clear on the target. And now you got the toolbox, man. You got the best tools, not rinky-dink tools, the very best. And the way to get the best, by the way, that I've done it is model someone who's already successful. All the tools I come up with, some I've obviously created, but the foundation came by standing on the shoulders of other giants. I went out and found somebody that's already got the result. Why reinvent the wheel? Success leaves clues. Find the best, figure out what they're doing, do that. Alter it, find your view of it, but start with what already is working rather than starting from scratch and trial and error. But if you've got that focus, the target, and you got the toolbox, and you're still not getting what you want, it's because you got inner conflicts. That's the third pillar. You've got to resolve your inner conflicts. Because as I try to explain to you, 80% of success in anything is your psychology and 20% is the mechanics. So those inner conflicts are when you take 2 steps forward and you pull 3 steps back. Right? When you say, boy, I'm totally committed to this, but you don't follow through. This is my expertise, the why guy part. Why? Why do you keep saying you want this? You have crystal clarity, you have the tools, and you're still not getting it? There's a conflict in you. You want to be totally successful, but you're afraid at some level that if you are totally successful, you will not be loved. You'll be rejected. You want to be in a position where you have total free time and you want to build a billion-dollar enterprise. These are conflicts. You really, truly know you got the tools and talents to make this happen, but a part of you doesn't think you deserve to succeed because of something you did at some point in your life or something you made up. Or you think making money or being successful economically is not spiritual. And you're committed to being spiritual, and yet the other part of you, it's the inner conflicts between fighting parts. So what do we do in this third pillar? Think of it as a vault we got to unlock. Think of it as unlock and unleash. That's the third pillar. The way you unlock and unleash is you identify the conflicts. You get clear what they are. So you may have total clarity, even the tools, but how can you totally unleash and commit when you're being pulled in 2 different directions? You say, Tony, how do I solve that? There isn't one way. You've got to get clear about what's most important to you today, not what you think you should do based on an old blueprint, an old belief system, your parents, society, your friends. Otherwise, you'll succeed and not be fulfilled. So once you identify the conflicts, now what you got to do is align. Align your life with what you really value. Align your life with what is most important to you. And then once you are in a position where you're aligned, guess what you'll do? Take action. You won't even have to work at it. When everything's in alignment, there's nothing pulling you away, boom, you go for it. But when you say, I want a relationship, but at the same time, simultaneously, I want to be in a position where, I never have to, I only get what I want every moment, or I never have to commit to anything, then obviously you're never going to get there. That inner conflict must be resolved. Once you align and you take action, guess what's going to happen? You're going to achieve. And once you achieve, you succeed. When you succeed, I'll tell you what you got to add to it. Celebrate, right? And then contribute. Pay it forward, if you will, as corny as that sounds. Remember the movie? Pay it forward. Don't pay it back. Take what you've got, what you've learned, and bring it to someone else. And if you bring it to someone else, it continues that cycle of fulfillment, of joy, of meaning in your life. Everything works. What is this really about? Ultimately, if you're going to have lasting change in anything, you're really talking about just raising your standards. I mean, I always tell people, if you want to know how to change your life, I give it to you in 3 words, boring as it sounds: raise your standards. And what does that mean? Corny as it sounds. Raise your standards. Oh, thank you for the breakthrough thought, Tony. I'm glad I wasted my time watching this little email with you. But think about it. Lasting change is different than a goal. You don't always get your goals, but you always get your standards. Maybe it'll help you is to think about it this way. I try to explain standards to people with a different set of words. Think of it as everybody in life gets their musts. They don't get their shoulds. Like, think about it. Most people have a list of shoulds, don't they? Don't you have a list of the shoulds, things you should do, you should follow through on? I should lose some weight, I should work out more, I should make more calls, I should respond more rapidly to my email, whatever, I should get into the office earlier, I should be, more confident, whatever your should list is. People love to have their should list be met, but it's kind of like New Year's resolutions. If it does, it's really exciting, but if it doesn't, which is most of the time, it's a little disappointing, but you kind of know it's not going to happen. But when you decide something is a must for you, an absolute must, when you cut off any possible, you say, I'm going to find the way or I'm going to make the way. Human beings, when they resolve things, when they make a real resolution inside themselves, which is they raise the standard and they make it a must, they find the way. Think about it in your own life. How about you had some area of your life where you raised your standard and your life has never been the same? Maybe at one time in your life you smoked cigarettes, or you did something and you did it for years and you kept trying to change it and kept telling yourself I should. And then one day something happened. Something just clicked you over. Something took you over that kind of tipping point. And inside yourself you said no more. And it was a very, very different experience, wasn't it? Something inside of you shifted, and what was a should became a must, and you've never gone back. Is there an area like that in your life you can think of? Again, did you ever smoke cigarettes? Did you ever eat a certain way, drink a certain form of alcohol, and then finally say no more, and you just don't go back? And notice this, it doesn't really take any willpower anymore. Because somewhere when we make this click, when we make something a must, we attach ourselves to it. It becomes part of our identity. And one thing I've learned in the last, 33 years of working with people from now over 100 countries, 4 million people, is human beings absolutely follow through on who they believe they are. If you said to me, well, I'm really going to work hard to stop smoking, but, I've been a smoker my whole life, and I am a smoker, I know your days are numbered. You're going to be back smoking cigarettes again, because we all act consistent with who we believe we are. I tell people the strongest force in the whole human personality is this need to stay consistent with how we define ourselves. If you define yourself as somebody who is really conservative, you're not going to be crazy and act nuts unless you're really drunk or something, and then you can say it's the alcohol, when it's really just you finally getting permission to be yourself. The alcohol is your excuse. If you're a really crazy person, you act crazy, outrageous, playful. You don't act conservative because that's not who you are. Very often people say, well, I can't do that. I'm not that kind of person. And I always say to people, really, when did you define yourself? I mean, really, how many years ago did you come up with what you could and couldn't do in your life? How many years ago? Most people,
if they really look at how they're living their life today, it's based on a set of standards, a set of beliefs that they made choices about 10, 20, 30 or more years ago. I mean, very often we made decisions in our youth or very young about what to believe, about what we were capable of, about who we are as a person, and that becomes the glass ceiling, if you will, that controls us. There's a corny metaphor, but it's true. I remember one time I was with my family at the circus, and there was a person there, and they had this big, giant elephant. And you look at this elephant, and they take this little rope, put it around the elephant's neck, and they drive this stake into the ground. And I mean, you look at this, and you know that elephant could rip down the entire tent with almost no effort. And yet, the elephant doesn't struggle, doesn't try. Why? Because the elephant's conditioned. And they take that elephant and condition the elephant when it's a baby elephant. That's how they train him. When it's a little baby elephant and it doesn't have the power yet, they put a big rope around it and they drive this huge stake in the ground, and the elephant fights and fights and fights. And one day, finally, that elephant decides, I'm not capable of pulling this out. And once that becomes the definition of an identity of anyone, an elephant in this case, they don't even try anymore. It's just who I am, that's how it is, that's just the way it is in my life. I'd like to ask you to take a look at any place you've got a limitation and ask yourself, when did I decide to accept that limitation? And you may not even see it as a limitation. You might see it as just that's who I am. But so often in our lives, we've adapted to be a certain way so that we don't fail or so that people will like us or respect us, but it's not necessarily who we are. Joy comes when you're spontaneous. It's really hard to be truly happy when you're not being yourself. And most of us have no clue who we are. And so a big part of my work, if you've ever been to an event, you know, is to get people to do things spontaneously without thinking, because that's when the real you shows up. That's when the energy comes alive. And when you do that, when you start to connect to your true nature, suddenly there's energy available for you to set a higher standard for what you want in your life. That's what this is really all about. And when I talk about standards, when I talk about, shoulds versus musts, think about your own life. I know there have been areas in your life where some point in time you just shifted and you raised the standard and your life changed. Because whatever people have their identity attached to, they live. We live who we believe we are. That's just how it works. It's just kind of like, I'll give you an example. Look at your physical body. Your physical body today is an absolute reflection of only one thing. Not your goals, not your desires, but your standards. The identity you have for yourself. If your standard is you're an athlete, then there's a certain amount of strength, a muscle tone, and energy that's available in your body on a regular basis because that's who you are. And so you do whatever's necessary to maintain that identity. Again, the strongest force in the human personality is this need to stay consistent with how we define ourselves. Because if you don't know who you are, you wouldn't know how to act. Once you lock in on that identity, your brain finds a way to keep you there. If you say, man, I'm overweight, I've always been overweight, I'm big boned, and that's the story you've got, then you're going to always find a way to get back there. That's your settling point. That's your identity. That's where things lock in. If you see somebody who's in really great shape, you ask them, do you work out? You know the answer. Yes. How often? And they'll tell you 3 times, 4 times, 5 times a week, whatever. In a seminar, I'll ask people, who here works out at least 5 days a week? And I'm stand up. And you look around that room, and you know that they work out 5 times a week because you can see their body. You don't just get a result without some kind of action, without some form of ritual. Ritual meaning actions you do consistently. Now, do you think those people that are out there working out 5 days a week, do they have more time than you do? Or I have, or anybody else? Of course not. Is their life less busy? Of course not. It's just a must for them. They must work out that way, and they've made that turn and their life changed. So I'm not saying you have to work out 5 days a week. I'm just saying whatever you really want, wants don't get met consistently. Standards do. Whatever you identify, this is who I am. And so it's not so much about changing your identity as it is expanding it. Deciding that, instead of your goals to lose 10 pounds, which is not compelling, what if your vision was to get back to my fighting weight? This year, this month, this next 90 days, I'm going to transform my body. I'm going to take on a new challenge. I'm going to find some technique or strategy, there's a million of them, that can reframe myself where I want to feel younger, stronger, more vibrant than ever before. Here's my reasons. Because I want the energy to really make my life work. Because it's tough out there, and I want to be stronger than I've ever been before. I want to go in front of the mirror, and if I'm naked, not, want to laugh. I want to look there and take a good look and go, yeah, I'm proud of whatever I see there. Whatever it takes, something's gonna make you laugh, smile, something that's gonna tease yourself, but something's gonna move you to another level. If you identify yourself in a new way and you own that every day, and that becomes the standard of how you live, you'll find the way to make that standard real. Money's the same way. Think about it. It doesn't matter what's happening, quote unquote, in the marketplace. People that make money find a way to make money no matter what, don't they? I mean, most people's standard is to pay their bills. So that's what most people find a way to do, even when economic times get tough. Most people, if that's their absolute standard, they find a way. Some people's standard is pay their bills most of the time. And so most of the time they do. Some people's standard is not just to pay their bills, but to take care of their family and maybe even some of their friends. And they find a way. In fact, you know, some people may be in a family where they don't have enough money. They barely have money to pay their bills. They work their guts out. And then somebody, their mother, their father, somebody else, their sister gets ill, and there's not enough money to take care of it. Nobody else has money in the family. They don't either, but they find a way to get that money to take care of their mother or father, don't they? And pay their bills. They never could do it before. Why? The situation made them raise their own standard. And not everybody does that. Somebody else in the family might have money and still not take care of their mother. It all comes down to the inner game, my friends. Changing your life is a change in the inner game. The outside world you can't control, but you have absolute control over this one if you learn the dynamics of what shapes you. And identity is one of those simple, clear, fundamental basics that if you start to shift it, everything else will shift in your life. Listen, if you want to create change and you want to do it right now, you know that coaching is the way to get it done. You go to someone who has the expertise, who's produced the result again and again, they've got a track record, and you get them to coach you. The challenge, of course, is getting somebody who's the best to work with you one-on-one is pretty darn difficult. In my own case, I'm privileged enough to get 7 figures to coach an individual for a year. But there is an opportunity for us to work together and for me to be able to coach you with the best of what I've learned in a process I've refined literally over 3 decades. And our events are all based around the idea of total immersion coaching. How do we get you to get the most explosive growth and change in your body, in your emotions, in your finances, in your relationship, in your career, in the shortest period of time? And how do we make it so damn fun that you can't believe it? Because most people, let's face it, if you say, I'm going to go to a seminar, I can't tell you how many people I've invited over the years. They're like, oh, I'm not going to sit there. I remember one particular celebrity friend who's like, I can't sit anywhere for more than 2 hours. And, I brought him to an event. And, this person is sitting at the event and their eyes are out of the back of their head. Their eyes are so big they can't even believe it. They're saying, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. I mean, you have to be curious. If you're watching this right now, you probably have heard or know somebody that's been to one of our events, and you've seen what's happened in their life. They've shared with you the results they've had, or you can check one of our videos or all the testimonials of results. The reason it works is because it's total immersion. But the reason they love it so much is it gets results. It works, and they love the process. I mean, you've got to be curious to think about how could we have an event where in one weekend, over the course of 3.5 days, you could get people where they said it was the greatest experience of their life, and many of them got dragged there by somebody else who'd already been saying, come on, trust me, you just got to try it. Some people didn't want to be there at all. But what happens is you go through a process that helps you to discover what controls the way you think, the way you feel, and what you do in your life. Every thought, every feeling, every emotion you experience in this lifetime is shaped by beliefs and values. All of your life is controlled by decisions you make. Decisions about what to believe, decisions about what to feel, decisions about what to do. And most of us are on automatic pilot, letting the world trigger us instead of taking back control of our life. And when you do that, just think of it this way. Anything you want to change. You want to change your body. You want to change your career, your business, your relationship. What to do requires the right strategy. If you want to lose weight and keep it off, you can't obviously just throw your pendulum and go on some silly diet. You got to know the things that are going to give you lasting results. So we teach those strategies. But some people even know what to do, but they don't do it. And why are we able to get people to do it, to follow through? Because 80% of success in anything, my friends, is psychology. And 20% is the mechanics. What that means is there's how to do stuff and there's why to do stuff. How to do it is not that complex. And if you really learn from somebody who knows those refined distinctions, they can show you those tipping points, those things you can do where in the least amount of time you get the biggest result. That's what I've spent 30 years basically studying. You know, like what makes couples go from wanting to kill each other to passionately want to make love together when they haven't done that for weeks or months or sometimes years. There's triggers that absolutely work. Or what makes somebody go from every single day overeating to one day, that's it, no more, and they make that shift where they do the things they've been talking about doing for years. I've had 3 decades of studying more than 4 million people from 100 countries. So at this point, I could be an idiot, and I'd have to be able to see that there's certain patterns in human behavior that make people crazy, make them frustrated, make them overwhelmed, make them depressed, make them give up. And there are other patterns that people have that absolutely light them up. They get them excited, they get them passionate, they get them where all of a sudden they develop a different habit, a different set of triggers where they find themselves following through consistently and doing the things that make what they dream about real. Those patterns, those triggers are really, really critical. So it's not enough to know just what to do. You got to know why you're going to do it, and you've got to align it with the way your brain functions. I know this sounds complex, but let me just tell you how we do this. We do it over the course of multiple days in total immersion with music and energy. And if you've never wanted to be in anything at all, but you enjoyed a rock concert or you enjoyed an NBA championship, you'll love this process as well. What I mean by that is, just imagine, most people in this life would never sit for a 3.5 hour movie that someone spent $200 or $300 million to make. They're too impatient. Our attention span just won't stay with that. And yet we do this all over the world. Do it in Australia with 5,000 people. Do it in London with 12,000 people. And we have headsets. We have people from all over the world coming. We often have 4 different languages being translated. And I might have, like in Australia, Anthony Hopkins sitting in the audience who's obviously incredibly successful, knighted by the Queen, Academy Award winner. I mean, why would he be there? Kind of got dragged there, but then he wouldn't leave, right? And I got a soccer mom from Germany, with a headset on, who's hearing everything translated, who's out of her mind. People stay from every walk of life, from virtually every culture you can imagine around the world. Because the process we're doing not only works, it's so much fun, it's so enjoyable, and it transforms your ability to meet your own needs. What does that mean? Well, everyone has different values, everyone has different goals or dreams, cultural background, religious beliefs. But human beings have something in common. We have the same fundamental needs. When your needs are met, you are lit up like a Christmas tree. You feel alive, you feel passionate. When your needs are not being met, you're going to feel a level of frustration or anger or fear or uncertainty or stress or maybe just boredom that just sucks the life out of a human being. All of us have 2 things we really want to master if you think about it. We have things we want to make better, change, or improve. I mean, I don't care who you are. If you're totally honest, there's always an area of our life we'd like to make better. If your career's perfect, your body's out of shape. If your body's great, you probably don't have enough time with your kids. If you spend all the time with your kids, your intimate relationship is probably not passionate. If your relationship's really passionate, maybe you're not taking care of your finances. I mean, it's the nature of human beings to focus on certain areas and miss others, and they tend to bite us later on. What I do is create a process where you're able to figure out what it is you really want in each of the areas of your life that are most important, what it is that's missing, show you where you want to, help you find out where you want to go, and then show you a set of strategies to maximize it. But then we click on the part that makes it all move forward, which is your emotion and your psychology. I mean, think about it. Information without emotion is forgotten. If I asked you, where were you on the day of, 9/11, no matter where you are in the world, American or not, most people remember the moment they heard it, what was around them, where they were, what they experienced. If I asked you, where were you on 6/11, most people have no clue. If I asked you anything I ask you about that has an emotional intensity to, there's this vivid understanding and memory. So what we do is take the information to change your life and attach an emotion to it within yourself that gets you to follow through. And that's what makes it enjoyable, and that's also what makes it work. In essence, here's what we do at all of our events. We do 3 things. Number 1, we get you totally focused. Focused on what matters most to you, not someone else. We don't decide for you. You decide what's most important. What do I want to make progress on? What do I want to change? What do I want to transform? And we put you in a state of just total laser focus. And when you're in that state, it feels incredibly powerful because most of us live our life bouncing around. I was meeting with some research recently where they talked about people today who are always multitasking, never focused. They're always doing 12 different things, never completely there. It's having an impact on the way our brains function. In fact, the journal in, I don't remember the exact journal, but the journal in Britain, the psychological journal that described this, did a long-term study and found that people that are constantly multitasking, never focusing, are creating a different structure in their brains. And it affects them. It slows them down. It makes them less powerful, less effective. We all know the power of focus. But when's the last time you got yourself out of the pattern of your daily life and got totally focused on what matters most to you and did it in a state where you felt strong, alive, passionate, and with other people that you could learn from and be immersed with? It's pretty rare, isn't it? So when you get totally focused on what you want, a simple principle is wherever focus goes, energy flows. If you spend all your time and focus on your career, but your career's doing great, or doing better than most people's right now, if you put all your focus on your kids, I bet your kids are doing great, and you have a great relationship with them. But the areas you're not focusing on are costing you. We're going to help you focus on the areas that matter most. Now, once you're totally focused and you know what you want, what your goal is, you know where you are and where you want to go, you understand where the gap is, that's healthy. Now, the second thing we need for you, the second pillar for sustainable success, think of these, if you would, as like, what does it take to have success last? What does it take to make a change last? I really wanted to follow up on a bit more on this $1 million day. Because, I mean, it really changed your industry. It was the 4-minute mile. Nobody thought it was possible. And I think there's a lot of people at home that, you know, they want to change their life. They have a vision of what they want to make happen. And they believe it, sort of, but they never follow through. And so I'd love to kind of get a sense of how did you get to the point where, you know, you make $1 million in, you know, was it less than 24 hours?
Yeah, it was like 18 hours.
In 18 hours, you make $1 million. I mean, it's beyond most people's imagination.
Yeah, and I think up until that point, the industry, the kind of record or whatever, the big thing that was thought of was like $100,000 in a 24-hour period.
Wow.
So
you took it 10x.
Yeah, so it was August 17th, 2004. I'll never forget that date. One, because when I lived in Orlando at the time, there was a hurricane, Hurricane Charlie, that just annihilated Central Florida, cut out all my power. And I actually had to break my garage door to get my car out. Me and a friend drove from my place a couple hours north to where my parents lived to actually manage the launch day of that project that was happening like the next day. And it's pretty interesting. It's almost like divine intervention, because looking back on it, you know, no one knew for sure how great that day was going to turn out. Right. I, of course, believe big, and we can talk about that a little bit.
Right.
But we can walk a little bit.
Sure.
The neat thing for me was, and just reflecting on when that happened with the hurricane and everything else, was that I ended up getting to share that major day and accomplishment with my family, who was always very, very supportive of me, even when I was in over $100,000 of debt by the time I was 23 years old.
Right.
You know, they
trying to do this very thing, failing at it, right?
Yeah, you know, they had given me a little bit of money, and even when I was in a lot of debt, they gave me a little bit more money. Not a lot, but just trying to help me until they could no longer help me anymore, and I had to figure things out on my own just because they weren't in that position. But so anyways, just mentioning that, it was great to be able to share that accomplishment and have them be a part of it. My dad actually managed a little whiteboard that showed how many sales, you know, before before the whole sale started. I said, this is the goal for us. You know, we're going for $1 million in the launch day for 24 hours because it's never been done anything like it. And so we wrote on the board exactly how many sales were needed to reach the goal.
So you broke it down.
Yeah, and every hour I'd report to my dad, and he'd ask for the update, and he was so proud managing the whiteboard, changing the number of how many more were to go.
Right.
And it was just an exciting day all the way around. But
and none of that would happen if you hadn't had the hurricane coming in. You would have been by yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe it never would have happened because of just, you know, the circumstances.
That's very cool.
But yeah, it's interesting that $1 million day really changed a lot of people's mindsets. You know, people have compared it to like the 4-minute mile.
Right.
You know, Roger Bannister, and you know, you were telling me off camera how many people broke the 4-minute mile once he did it.
Well, somebody said 37. The real number is 24. 24 people within a year for thousands of years. This wasn't something that happened for 100 years. In the Roman times, they're trying to do a 4-minute mile. It was thought the human body couldn't physically go that fast. They would even put a guy with a rope with a bull behind him to give him extra incentive so he wouldn't get gored, and it would happen. But Roger Bannister ran that 4-minute mile. by rehearsing it in his head. He could never get his body to move that fast. So in his mind, he saw it over and over and over again until he got this little sense of certainty and kicked it over the edge. But the kicker is, just like you in your industry, once that happened, 24 people run a 4-minute mile within a few years, and now high school students run 4-minute miles.
Right.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
And now here, you know, filming this in 2009, 5 years later, a little less than 5 years, you know, not only is that, you know, $1 Million Day been done by multiple people, I've actually done it several times myself now again, but other people have gone way beyond that. You know, Frank has been involved with a massive day, many times that. But it was like a huge mindset shift in people to make that happen.
So let's talk about that, because everybody has mindset. You know, people watching say, okay,
beliefs,
it's really,
like
they're going to go, wonderful, you had $1 million day. Jerk, I've never even had a $10,000 day, right?
Absolutely.
So what I wanted to get across, though, is you knew exactly what you're going after. You had absolute certainty you're going to find a way to make it happen. You envisioned it.
A week before, and this is, anyone can look this up online, a week before the launch day, I registered the internet domain name milliondollarday.com.
Wow.
And it's fact. It is registered. People can go and look it up right now about what the date was when it was registered, and it would have been like August 10th because the launch was a week later on the 17th.
So this is what we've been talking about, right?
Yeah.
You had this vision, you made it so clear and real in your mind, so certain, and then you found a way to execute, and you had some grace, right? There's a little bit of luck and a little grace involved. So it's like, what do? You have to have three things. You have to have this absolute obsession on what you want, even if it's never done before. You got to get yourself so certain. You got to secondly execute, because you still have to execute.
Right.
And then you have to have some grace, and those three things work. But I want to get across something else. Before you had $1 Million Day, what was like a giant peak for you? Didn't you have like $100,000?
Yeah, well, about 3 months before that.
Come sit down by the fire.
Sure.
We'll sit down. I want to hear that.
So about 3 months before that, a mutual friend of ours, Jeff Walker.
Right, I know Jeff.
Who, Jeff, it's kind of a funny story because Jeff was known, you know, Jeff orchestrates product launches. He had a lot of experience with it, more than anyone else in our industry.
Right.
And at the time, back then, Jeff was known, he was called 6 and 7. That was his little code name, because he made 6 figures in 7 days.
Right.
And so I was getting ready to do a seminar, my own event. And up until this point, it's been the only one I ever did. Frank actually got me to do it.
Right.
And I never sold anything to the internet marketing market. He said, you know, you really should just do an event. People would love to hear just you teach for a weekend. I'm like, okay, I'll do it.
Right.
So before releasing it for sale, I was talking to Jeff on the phone. We'd become friends at that time. And Jeff was sharing some principles with me on building anticipation in marketing. You know, not just coming out with something for sale, building up to it. You know, it's just like the music industry. When they release an album, you know, they let you know months in advance, or a movie comes out. You know, so Jeff taught me some principles about building anticipation, and so I put that into my marketing with everything else that I had kind of figured out from my own experience.
Right.
I released the seminar. And I actually ended up doing like, it was like $100,000 that was made in the first day, but it really all came in like the first 12 minutes before I took the site down.
Wow.
You know, I mean, it wasn't going to do much more than that if I would have left it up. But so I teased Jeff. I was like, you know, you did 100,000 in 7 days. I did it in 12 minutes. And so, you know, all of us are really good friends. It's competitive. We support each other. And, you know, I was thrilled when Frank broke my record after I did $1 Million Day. And, you know, and so we're very supportive of each other and of anyone in the industry, because it doesn't take anything away from me. It's good for them. So that happened. So I had that milestone of $100,000.
And part of what drove you in each of these cases was, one, to set the standard higher. That's what all of you guys are doing. You
like
love
stairs.
each other.
You go higher and higher steps.
So do me a favor, because a lot of people go, okay, you blew me away with $1 million in you know, less than 24 hours, you know, 100,000 in 12 minutes.
Right.
But before you ever got there were lower stairs.
Sure.
Bring me down, because you didn't go straight to the million.
Absolutely not.
You could do it today because you've demonstrated it, right?
Absolutely.
It's like the 4-minute mile.
Absolutely.
But where did it start even earlier for you, before you got to? So what we've got to do is make that change in those standards. That's where the shifts happen. It doesn't happen any other place. And I'll give you a very simple example. If you want to know the difference in people's lives, it all comes down to, what are the things that are must for you versus shoulds. So let me tell you this. We said to have an extraordinary life, you got to have an extraordinary psychology, right? Extraordinary psychology means you got to live in an extraordinary state. To be in an extraordinary state, you got to condition your nervous system, your body, your physiology and focus to be at their best. Do you agree with this? Yes or no? Then to do that, though, you can do that. Why doesn't everybody? Not because you can't. We all have the ability. It's because of our standards. I remember a time early in my career, I was about 24, and I went to do a seminar in Boston.
And in those days, a big seminar for me was like 125 people. It was a 3-day seminar, and we worked around the clock, and people made such extraordinary changes in their life. And at the end of it, I was feeling so fulfilled. I was thinking, my God, I'm 24, maybe 25 at the time, and I am so happy because I have found my mission in life. I'm doing what I love. It's making a difference in people's lives. This is extraordinary. So we finished about midnight on the Sunday night. And around midnight, I'm still wound up, so I don't feel like going to bed. So I decided, okay, let me take a walk here, and I decided to go through Copley Square. If you've been through Copley Square, it's a pretty neat place. Because in Copley Square, you can look up and you can see buildings that were here before we were known as the United States, and beside them you see skyscrapers that are new. It's a pretty cool place. So I'm walking around midnight on Sunday night. There's nobody in Copley Square midnight on Sunday night. And I'm walking along, and I see this guy in the distance, and he's kind of stumbling back and forth between the gutter and the sidewalk. He's got a long trench coat on, his head's down like this. He's holding a brown bag, and I can start to smell him even before I get there, and I'm thinking, this guy's obviously drunk. And as I started to get closer, I thought, I bet he's going to beg me for some money. And sure enough, whatever you focus on life tends to happen, doesn't it? So sure enough, he gets real close to me, and I thought all of a sudden he wasn't going to do it, and all of a sudden he popped his head up. It was really weird. He went, "Mister!" He had this really bizarre looking sounding voice. He went, "Mister, could you loan me a quarter?" And I thought, do I want to reward this behavior? And then I thought, I don't want him to suffer. Do you have this dilemma sometimes? Like, I'm not here to judge. So years ago, I finally decided I always just give. Even if the person's pulling a scam, that's for them to deal with. If I have the ability, then I give. And so I thought, well, could I teach him something? So I asked him a question back. I said, is that all you want is a quarter? So he goes, yeah, just 1 quarter. 1 quarter changed my whole life. 1 quarter. I said, really? He said, yeah, 1 quarter. So I reached in my pocket, and I pulled out my money clip. And in those days, I was very young, just starting to succeed. And my original mentor was a man named Jim Rohn. I don't know, how many have heard of Jim Rohn? Anybody? Yeah, he's a great guy. And Jim told me, he said, Tony, look, you've come from a poor background. You got a poor psychology. You got to change it. He said, you don't have any money, so pretend you do. He said, start training your brain. Condition it. He said, go save all your money, get $300 bills, and put them on the outside of your money clip, even though you only have $5 in between that. So every time you put it out, you'll see that. You'll feel inspired. You'll feel better. He said, and you'll feel better, you'll do better. So I was like, okay. So I did. So I pulled my money clip, and sure enough, I got $300 bills in. I made sure he saw the bills. So I'm tearing through that, right? Looking in between there to see if I can find some change. But I made sure he saw it. Sure enough, he's looking at the $100 bills, checking it out. I find the quarter, I pull it out, take the money, put it in my pocket. I notice he's watching my hand going into the pocket. I took the quarter, and I looked at him, and I said, sir, life will pay any price you ask of it. And I gave him the quarter. And then something really interesting happened. He took the quarter. He looked at the quarter. He looked at me. He looked at my pocket. He looked back at the quarter, looked at me, looked at my pocket, looked at me again, looked at the quarter, looked at my pocket, looked back at me and said, you're weird. And then he shuffled on off like this, right? And I thought to myself, wow, what's the difference between him and me? I mean, I was 24, 25 at the time, doing what I love most, have my mission in life, and he's in his early 60s, drunk on the street begging for quarters. What's the difference? And I thought, well, maybe God's blessed me because I'm such a good person. I thought, oh, and he's such a bad person, that's such bull. And I thought, wow, maybe the answer to that question is what I just told him. Life will pay whatever price you ask of it. But you know what's interesting? You got to ask intelligently. In the Bible it says, ask and you shall what? Yeah, pretty good formula. You ought to look into it. But you know what? It says, ask and you shall receive, but I'm sure it meant ask intelligently. I'm sure that's what God meant. I'm sure he didn't mean bitch and you will receive. Whine and you will receive. I don't think that was the instruction. Now, if you were going to ask intelligently, there might be 5 elements of that. Number 1, you'd have to ask specifically, wouldn't you? You wouldn't ask in a general way. People do it all the time. They go, I want more money. Fine, here's $1. Get out of here. Very often, you're getting what you're asking for. You're just not aware of how general you're asking. Clarity is power. The more clear you are about exactly what it is you want, the more your brain knows how to get there. Your brain is a servo mechanism. It's like a bomb. Those bombs, those missiles, they have a servo mechanism. So if the target moves, it knows what the target is, it follows it. Your brain, when you condition it, knows exactly what to go for and it'll find a way to get there. Did you ever buy a certain outfit or a certain car and suddenly see that car outfit everywhere? How many of you have had that experience? Say, aye. How come that car outfit's everywhere? It always was everywhere, but now you notice it. And the reason is because there's a part of your brain called the reticular activating system, the RAS. That part of your brain determines what you notice and what you don't notice. Your brain spends most of its time trying to make sure you don't notice because you'll go crazy if you notice everything. But when you decide what's most important to you, your brain goes after it. Everyone I know who's successful builds what I call an RPM plan. An RPM is built on the metaphor that the way to get from where you are to where do you want to go to the fastest is you got to build power, like in a car, RPMs. And the R stands for they know the result they're after. They know what they want precisely. If you don't know exactly what you want or you let yourself get beyond that into something general, you're not going to achieve it. Clarity is power. You got to know the specific result you're after. What do you want? If you can't answer that question right now in your personal life, in your body, in your relationships, in your finances, in your spirituality, then you're not going to be as fulfilled as you want to be. Today we're going to have you answer one of those questions at least. The second part of it, you got to know why you're doing it. Because you know what? You may get a big goal. Someone says, I want to make $1 billion. I want to bring peace to the earth. Why? Because as soon as you come up with a goal, all the obstacles show up. And unless you've got enough emotional drive to break through that, you're never going to discover what it really takes. So you got to get yourself past that. And the way to get past that is have enough reasons. Reasons come first, answers come second. This man did not know what he wanted. He did not have enough reasons. To ask intelligently, you got to ask specifically. To ask intelligently, you got to know why you want it, have enough drive to make it happen, enough juice to make it happen. If you don't have enough reasons, you will not make it happen. And the M is, what is your massive action plan? What is going to get you to actually fall through? Because the first plan's not going to work and the second plan's going to work, so you better have enough plans that if the first two don't work, you still got something else. Otherwise, you're going to be having excuses why it didn't work. So asking intelligently requires that. So if we're going to be extraordinary in our results, we've got to be in an extraordinary state. We've got to know what we want and we've got to go use it.
Yes.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, like on the first day, is you said, like to my friend over here, you got to lead your people. You got to learn enough about the job that you hate and then lead them. And what I wanted to ask you is, well, being sort of on the front lines of things, how do you actually, or what are your ideas on leadership? And you gave some examples today. Like, for example, you sort of come up with a plan and then you ask the questions. So that's one strategy.
That's only one part, yes.
I was wondering if you could share maybe 2 or 3 more.
Sure, I'll be happy to. My number one belief about leadership is you're a servant. Here's what I mean specifically. The word hero, that is in the archetype of like men and you and I bet. Is it true that inside of you, you really want to be the best, you want to create the best, share the best, do the best? Is that a metaphor for you in your life?
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too. So I think people in this room tend to have that as their metaphor. So all of us at some level, man or woman wants to be a hero. The word hero in its Latin root means servo. Servo means servant. It actually means slave. The hero, why they're the hero, is become the ultimate servant to something larger than themselves, people and so forth. The person who thinks they're going to lead by demand or by position can only lead for a short period of time. But the person whose idea of serving is, my belief is, if you can find a way to take any group of people and help them to experience their needs at a richer, deeper level than anyone else, then together you guys can get anything done. Anything. Now, it may not work the first time, but together you can get to that point. Because needs are ultimately what we're after. We're not after the vehicle we think we're after. You want $1 billion, then you get it. I got plenty of clients, and I will tell you, it is not the end game. And so then they go after their second billion. Or you think it's getting married, and then you get it, and you find out it's not the end game. There's certain needs that have to be there, and the ultimate needs are growing and giving. Because you only can feel so good filled up by yourself. So my core belief is, I got to serve. If I serve, I can lead. Because I believe motive does matter. If my motive is just to get you to do something for me, there's a certain amount of power that I can get to do that if I strategize, if I think, if I feel, and also if it serves a greater good, even if I don't intend it. If the bumblebee goes to try to get the nectar it wants, its selfish goal, I believe there's a higher power that guides it all. And when that bumblebee goes, it doesn't intend to give anything but pollen sticks to its legs.
as it goes about trying to get what it wants, that's how flowers are created. I really believe that everything has a web of connection. If your intent is to serve yourself, you're still going to serve something more than yourself, and you're going to get a certain amount of insight. If your intent and your motive is to serve something, yourself, but also something more, just your kids, then I believe you get a different level of insight. And because you're serving more of what serves life. It's not just me. It's me and my family. If you're trying to serve a community, I believe you get a different level of insight. If you're trying to serve humanity, you get a different level of insight. I get emotional thinking about it because this is why I do what I do. So when someone stands up, it's not about business, it's not about anything, but about serving them. So I will use abrasive or creative language. I'll use whatever it takes, humor, stupidity. I'll make fun of myself. I'll challenge. I'll do anything to serve. That's why I'm here. I don't need to do that anymore, but I love to see someone free and alive and lit up. So when that's your motive, no matter how people perceive you on the outside, if they're around you long enough, you can't hide what your real motive is. And they'll see it and they'll feel it. Motive does matter. If it's to serve something higher, it'll be that. That doesn't mean you don't get served too. And in business, you got to be served. Or I used to do business and I lose money in the business and everybody else was happy. And it was wonderful, except I had no business. So it's, killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. So I've learned to put that balance in. But that gives me power. That's why time disappears for me. Because I'm not about getting some action done. I'm about the outcome. Question.
We talked about, the economy being real rough going forward. But you've given so much of yourself, and I can see it, and the passion behind these people about teaching these really important business principles, that I'm confident that it's going to be a lot shorter to come out of this recession.
Thank you so much. I honor you. Thank you. Give me a hand. How many of you have been in a situation, again, where you've learned information was valuable, you were excited about it, and you didn't follow through, and it wasn't because you weren't interested, it was because you were overwhelmed? Who's been there before? Raise your hand and say, aye. We want to help you to change that. The way you change that is by learning one simple skill. It's a skill you already have, but you may not be using it to its maximum ability. And tonight, rather than teach you the whole skill, let's just point it out. And the skill is called chunking. Chunking is the understanding that when you're first learning something, that something feels like many things. Case in point, you're going to learn to drive a stick shift car and you're brand new at driving a car. Who can remember this experience? And was it overwhelming, yes or no? Why? Because driving a car today for most of you is one chunk of information. I'm going to go drive. That's it. Because most of what you've done, you got cognitive knowledge about, you repeated it enough with enough emotion, you did it enough in your body. Now, all of those complex things happen, and what you call it is just driving. But the first time you were driving, it was a lot of different activities. I can remember, they called me speed racer because I couldn't figure out how to get anything going. I got in the car, accelerator, brake, got that, watched the road, and I'm supposed to do this too? And watch the rearview mirror? No, this ain't happening, right? Because it was overwhelming. Because what it was one chunk of you was figuring out how to accelerate, one part of you brake, another part of you's got to watch the road, another one's watching the rearview mirror, another one's got to figure out the timing of moving this in. But after a while, it just became driving. And most of you drive today literally on automatic pilot. Because many of you, how many of you have ever done this? You're driving along, and all of a sudden your mind goes somewhere else, and all of a sudden you go, who's been driving? Who's had that experience before? Say aye. Well, who's been driving is your subconscious mind, the part of you that makes your heart beat 100,000 times a day without you having to think about it even when you're sleeping. And your subconscious absorbs way more when you're in a position of total absorption like you are here, immersion, more than your conscious mind does. But what will make you confident and help you is if you can design a few triggers or a few ways to take all this math stuff and break it into the way most people learn. Most people think 1, 2, 3, mini. They get past 3 chunks and they get a bit overwhelmed. So we have these 7 tools that we're giving you, these 7 pillars. The first one we spent the morning on was this concept of taking stock. And there are these 5 questions. That's the first pillar. Once that's in place, now we focus on the second one, innovation and marketing, which we're going to touch on tomorrow, and we touched a little bit on today. Then we go to the third one. It's strategy versus tactics. It's a bit of, what is this education marketing? It's all the things you're starting to learn right now that can give you a huge competitive advantage. How many agree the content you just learned could give you a huge advantage? Implement it. How many would agree with that? Say aye.
I'm in the business of empowering men to help make their women happy and fill their needs for joy and love by selling.
Or do you sell diamonds?
I do. And I also empower women to make themselves feel beautiful too. You can do it on your own. My question is, how do I get more people to call for help?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't want more people. I would want more of the right people.
The right people. People who are either thinking now or will be thinking about buying a diamond. Because people don't wake up one morning and say, I'm getting engaged, I'm buying a diamond. They give some thought to it, the process, and they do research.
So who is the best of those people? Because there are lots of people that could be thinking about buying a diamond. I'd like to get a gold grill and have a diamond right there just to be classy. So,
People who are planning.
It is pretty classy.
People who are planning to get engaged or who are having anniversaries or want to upgrade a diamond, those are the people who
Which of those three is the most desirable to you?
Well, not necessarily the people who can spend the most, because that's not where necessarily the highest profit margin is, but the people who are currently thinking about getting engaged and need help.
Okay. So I would start immediately by only focusing on those with the campaign we're talking about specifically.
Well, I generate leads online. I don't have a shopping cart. I don't believe in it.
I think you're right, by the way. I think it's a smart call. I think that's a very good decision. Because, I would be sketched out by a diamond on the interwebs, But anyway, so if that's what you're after, if you're after those dudes, I would find a way to reach just those guys.
I'm confident that when I get them to call me, I'll close them.
So really, the question should be, how do I get them to call me?
Right?
Yeah. So
what's the offer that would be powerful enough to get them to make that call?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I want to point out that was so critical, guys. I'm listening in an hour's conversation. You're not going to remember everything, but one of those pieces are you don't have to be a great marketer if you have the right what? Offer.
Well, I'm in addition to sending them the report, I'm offering them, let's say, a 5% discount on any piece of diamond jewelry that they'll buy, or a 10% discount on an engagement ring setting or wedding band if they buy the loose diamond from me as well. So that's what I'm working right now.
If you want them to call you, so you're trying to make the sale, you're trying to get the commitment for them to raise their hand as a buyer in the print, in the media, in the email, right? And that's very difficult. It's proving to be very difficult, right? So I would shift the offer to be like, look, I don't care when you're going to get married, but I'm feeling really, really generous right now, and marriage is a beautiful thing, and it's lovely, and blah, 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 whatever. That didn't sound right, but you know what I mean. If you call today, I will give you X discount whenever you choose to buy your diamond, because chances are, when they call you, they're already ready to buy the diamond, but they're being scared off by the 10% discount today because they're thinking, well, I'm going to have to buy today. But if you remove that pressure and you remove that fear, it gives them permission to call without that. Does that make sense?
It does. It allows me to... Actually, it's any time. My offer is not limited to if they call today.
So give them a reason to call today.
I can make it clearer that their offer is whenever they call.
Yeah, so give them a reason.
Or even if they have a friend call who mentions their name.
Well, we need to be very specific in the marketing, though. We need to be very specific. Call by X, and I will give you X discount plus X cool stuff anytime you ever buy a diamond from me. And if you buy, here's the irresistible offer. If you buy a diamond from a competitor, that's okay. I will send you as a congratulatory gift a gold chain for your wife to wear on her wrist on her wedding day, just as my show of appreciation for your thanks in calling me. I think this
how many see the difference here? The secret, though, to this only works if, when you get that person, you can truly what?
Convert.
You got to deliver. If you can really deliver, you can make these offers. The very thing we did the other day. We made the offer. We just make it more and more and more compelling because you know you're going to deliver. And when you get that, that's how you stand out from anybody else, and that's how you get the phone ringing.
Well, humbly, I deliver. Delivery is not my problem.
Okay.
It's figuring out what the irresistible offer has to be and how to...
But how do you figure? How does anybody figure that out? By the way, Frank's going to go away. I'll go away. Everybody's going to go away. How are you going to find the most irresistible offer? How? Well, you do is test, but the first thing is you just brainstorm and find somebody before you even test anywhere else and say,
Would this make you call? How many would pick up the phone for a 5 to 10% discount? Raise your hand. One person out of 1,000, out of 900. How many pick up the phone if I can get a 10% discount forever? Just out of curiosity, anytime. See if that does it. How many pick up the phone if you say, listen, I'll evaluate any other diamond you have, and I'll beat the price, or I'll send you a gold bracelet for your lady at some stage. Let me see a show of hands. Which, by the way, we just added something. Evaluate any other diamond you're putting out there. So now I've got a trusted expert who, if they don't deliver for me, I get something no matter what. And we just got 90% of the room to raise their hand. All we changed, how much does that cost, by the way, to make that change in his business? Nothing. Zero. Changing an offer costs nothing. This is where you make 1,000, 10,000% chance. We're talking about optimizing, right? This optimization is the part to go from leads to people that actually engage with you, right? The equivalent of the appointment or having the meaningful conversation. So all you've got to do is start to say, guys, I can change my business 500%, 1,000%, 30%, 40%. But what I understand is the greatest investment I've got is the X factor of my intelligence, my creativity, my sitting down and brainstorming. You don't have to be the genius to do it. You can hire somebody like Frank, you can bring somebody in to do it, or you can just sit down and go, you know what? I'm going to stop being a goddamn business operator who's running like crazy in my business. I'm going to step out and be the business owner and go, what will produce this result? That was the goal of these 5 days.